project, I did the judicial branch as kind of a little bit of a review, since that's the unit we're doing right now, and I looked at ChatGPT as my AI for it. Okay, so the question, or I guess request I posed to ChatGPT was, tell me about the judicial branch for AP US government in 2026, to try to get like the most current form of content. So it spit back me a long list of content, and in here I pasted the few parts that I kind of took small issue with, or felt like could be expanded. So the first part that I felt could be expanded was this saying that there are 9 justices, and unless I misunderstood from class, it made it sound like 9 justices is not a rule, it's just more a standard that they follow. And the way that ChatGPT phrased it here made it seem more like that is the rule, that there will always be 9 justices on the Supreme Court. So I thought that that was something that could be clarified. On the AP exam, it probably doesn't at all matter whether or not you know if 9 justices is a rule or a practice, but for education stance, I thought that that could be clarified. And then, my line is a little off center here, but here it says that for the Supreme Court, justices serve life term, and then it just said in parentheses, good behavior, and I felt like it could expand on what constitutes good behavior, because that could just mean like not doing anything illegal. Does it mean how closely they follow the Constitution? Like, it also didn't say who gets to decide good behavior, so I thought that maybe like it could give an example of what bad behavior would be in the context of Supreme Court justices, or just like how that process goes. And then it says that judicial review is not explicitly in the Constitution, which is right, but it doesn't ever actually say what is in the Constitution. And I thought that that was something that could be added, because the only, like, out of the large list that ChatGPT gave me, the only thing that said about the Constitution was that the Supreme Court, or the judicial branch, was made in Article 3. So I just think that it could give a little list of like what the Supreme Court, or what the judicial branch constitutionally is supposed to do versus its powers it gained later on. More content quality. It said that original jurisdiction is very limited, and then just had a little parentheses that was like disputes between states. And I was saying that district courts have original, and they expand more on Supreme Court's cause for original, because I remember in class we talked a lot about like the 2 to 3 main ways that the Supreme Court would have original jurisdiction, like it says between states. I believe it's that we covered something about like if the U.S. is a party / the federal government, and if it is a diplomat. So I just thought that there's not that many ways that the Supreme Court will have original jurisdiction, so I think they could have listed it. For this, I highlighted the at least 4 justices must agree to hear the case. I just thought that ChatGPT could, give a little support for the clerks that have to read all the cases before. This isn't really a real criticism, but I would appreciate a little bullet point that said that the clerks read through and like filter out a lot of the cases before it gets to the justices. Again, that's not really like a AP exam required knowledge point, but I think the clerks are important, and ChatGPT should recognize that. Here, to be fair, when I made this, we hadn't gone over what stare decisis was in class, so I was already very confused, but either way, I felt like its explanation on what that is was very loose. Like, I didn't really get what it was saying. I read it. Like, when I inputted this in the prompt, we hadn't gone over it in class yet, and I tried to read it, and it didn't make sense to me, so I think that kind of proves a little bit of, like, I wouldn't be able to rely solely on ChatGPT's explanation to show what I should know about the class. Okay, my question analysis. So I won't read out the full question, but this is about Marbury versus Madison, and its significance. I thought that this was a pretty valid question because it brings up a court case, but it's not just like, what policy does this reference, or what ruling happened here. Like, it took a little bit of remembering the court case, analyzing it, etc. So I thought it was a pretty good question, and all of the answer choices were viable, so it wasn't like, oh, is the answer oranges, unicorns? It establishes the principle of judicial review and like TVs, you know? Okay. This one was, which of the following is an example of appellate jurisdiction? And I thought it was okay, but it was a little basic. Like, I don't think this is maybe the type of thing that would show up on the AP exam, because it was kind of just like, here's the vocab word, almost like what's the definition. But it wasn't like the simplest question that ChatGPT gave me, so I thought like it was boring, but it probably could be a fairly valid question. I also said that other than A, like C and D are pretty obviously wrong, and again, on the AP exam, I feel like it usually is a little trickier to figure out which one. Okay. This one was, which of the following statements about the Supreme Court's case selection process is accurate? Let's see. I said yes, this is fine. I just had slight technicalities with it. I said it doesn't include instances with 2 or more states being mandatory, because from what I understand from class, when there are 2 or more states involved, the Supreme Court has to pick it up, and that's not technically included in here. And I just said that they could add typically in the question statement so that you can't nitpick it that hard. But overall, that was just me being kind of annoying, and I think this question is fine. This one was, which of the following best illustrates the principle of stare decisis? And it was, the court follows a precedent established in an earlier case. I thought this was fairly decent. Again, it is kind of basic, it's just a term and the definition, but that was okay to me. I thought that C was pretty obviously wrong because it's barely related to the judicial review. But overall, I thought this question was fine. Again, it wasn't the most challenging question, which is a pattern I noticed with almost all these questions. So it's not the type of thing I feel like I would see on the AP exam, because there's usually more stimulus. But yeah. Okay, this is, which of the following is a check on the judicial branch by the legislative branch? And I said, not the best. Because not all of the questions are, not all the answers are viable or possible checks on the judicial branch. Some of them don't even have to do with the judicial branch. D is the Senate confirming executive. Oh, actually, no, sorry. Not that one. But I don't know. I thought that these were really, really obviously not it, and it was way too easy to be on the AP exam or even a very helpful review question. I think that it's good in that it shows you which is the legislative branch is a check on the judicial branch by the legislative branch. But yeah. Okay. This is the Brown v. Board of Education and which constitutional principle it best represents. I said, yeah, I guess. It's fine. It's just really, really easy. But I liked that it gave you the case and you kind of had to analyze a little bit of what principle would apply here. But to me, again, it was just really obvious. So it wasn't very challenging or helpful in terms of studying. Which of the following scenarios best demonstrates judicial activism? This was very just here's a word, give the definition. Because pretty much the definition of judicial activism is that they go against the precedent, which is pretty much just what C is saying. I thought that instead of doing this, where it was just the word and a definition, they could give a scenario, an example of judicial activism happening, and then we had to choose the answer choice, judicial activism. And some of these are just really obvious. The court declines to hear a controversial case. I don't know, that has no relation to anything. So I said it was probably valid, but also probably wouldn't appear. Okay, so those are my 7 questions. So all in all, I feel ChatGPT is okay if you want a general overview of course content and you need a little refresh. I think it's good if you're starting out at square one in a sense, but in terms of actually reviewing for the AP exam or a school test or something, I don't think it's going to tell you a lot of things that you don't already know, in a sense. Like, if I kept giving it more specifications in the prompt, I think it probably could have gotten a little more helpful. But also, at that point, I think I would just take my notes and make my own study guide, because then I'm learning from both the process of making the study guide and reviewing the questions, instead of just like not learning from the process of typing into ChatGPT and only reviewing with the questions. I didn't find it very engaging. Like, I don't think that I learned a ton from using it, but it didn't give me wrong answers, so I don't think that it's terrible. I just don't think it's that helpful in advancing my knowledge on the judicial branch. So that's all. Woo!